complex, much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.
Good afternoon. My name is James K. Holder II. Some of you may know me as Sir James II. I'd like to welcome you back to Not On My Watch. As always, I'd like to ask you to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I want you to retweet this and repeat this. If you're watching, today is Thursday, March 8th, 2018, and it is International Women's Day. Now, we know we were already celebrating Women's History Month, but within that, this is a very special day around the world, and I've been very inspired by sort of the change in pace on what the conversation has been online today. A lot of people have been posting different inspirational photos or videos or clips or quotes about women who inspire them, and so I kind of wanted to just take that opportunity to talk about or to continue that in this episode today. Now, I will say this is going to be a little less formal of an episode. It is late in the day. I wasn't really sure that I was going to post anything today, mainly because part of what I try to do here is create sort of an open platform and an open dialogue, but of course I'm by myself. So as a man, I tend to be, I feel like I have a good grasp on women's issues, or I feel like I have a good grasp on, creating a stage where everyone can feel welcome and everyone can feel valued. But I also realize that there's certain elements of that I'm never going to be able to do. So part of me was like, maybe I shouldn't post anything because so many, people are posting really authentic expressions for the day. And then I just figured, okay, well, there's no harm in just me saying, giving a thank you and a kudos to women who inspire me. And so that's what I'm going to use this 30 minutes for. If you don't like women, or if you think that's going to be boring for you, you might flip the channel. I think it would be beneficial just because it might surprise you who I say thank you to. Or then it might not, I don't know. So one thing is that March 8th is not just International Women's Day for my family. On March 8th, 1992, that was the date that my father passed away of cancer, and that happened in Atlanta, Georgia, but he was from Monrovia, Liberia. Our whole family was from there. We moved here because of the Civil War in Liberia in 1990, and we really would have probably gone back at some point had he not passed away in 1992. So that changed the family structure of our household a lot. And maybe not so much. But my mom really stepped up and became like a superhero to all of us growing up. I'm the youngest of 3 to my mom and 5 to my dad. And so I think my mom in many ways is like sort of a superhero to me. I hate talking about this because she gets on my nerves, and I really don't want this documented, but why not? If I had to say thank you to any woman on International Women's Day, it would be my mom, because she is fantastic, and she is the most generous and kind-hearted and selfless person that I've probably ever met. I'm very lucky to have someone like that as my parent. So I wanted to put that out there. And my mom just is very self-sacrificing. She used to sacrifice a lot to give me the opportunities to do things, especially as a single parent. So I wanted to put that out there, and I might bring her back up as I talk about other women that inspire me, but I kind of want to talk about ironically, it's International Women's Day, and I'm talking about my life, but here we are. So I want to first give a big shout out to teachers, because I think, especially as going to black schools my entire life, teachers really played a huge role in sort of giving me the confidence and a bit of like strength, that added push. There was always like some teacher who saw something else in you and gave you a little bit more energy. So I want to thank, you don't know who any of these people are, and that's fine. But Miss Davis from Love T. Nolan Elementary School in Atlanta, in College Park, Georgia, that was where when we first got to the United States, I had started school in Liberia at SPS, but I had to restart school because I was so young when we got here, and so it was this weird time span. But Miss Davis was really, really accommodating and really understanding of what our family situation was. We had an art teacher named Miss Stevens. Now, this was a white lady. She had really long, from what I remember now, this is like me in kindergarten. Miss Stevens was very nice. And she drove a little Honda. It was like a hatchback. And she was very encouraging as an art teacher. When my father passed away in '92, I would have been in the first grade, and my sister would have been in school with me as well. And so she would let us stay late and work on art projects and stuff, and she would take us home to our house in College Park. She would really went above and beyond. There was one time where there was this big exhibit at the school where the newspaper came and everything, and I had done this sculpture of a snake. It was really weak, right? I did a giraffe too. I did a sculpture of a giraffe and a snake. And it was also, random because I was featured in this newspaper. I do not have the clip. Nothing's coming on screen today. And so that was really fascinating time. My sister was a little jealous because she was the real artist in the family, but Miss Stevens did a really good job and did a lot to, one, showing sympathy as a teacher. She just did more than she needed to do, and then also sort of gave me the encouragement to pursue art in any real way. And then there's Mrs. Hall, who in the 6th grade, this was at McNair Middle School, also in College Park. Ms. Hall was the first person. We didn't have a particularly close relationship, but she really, I think she saw something in my mom. When she would come to the teacher conferences and stuff, because I was not the best middle school student, my mom became very familiar with those teachers. But she sort of found ways to encourage me, and she would write recommendations for my summer programs. And she was the first person who told me I was really had potential as a public speaker. So I always held on to that message from her. And that was my history teacher in the 6th grade. I was not big into history, but who knows? But it was good that I had a teacher who, even though I might not have been her best student, she saw something in me and amplified that. Then going from middle school to high school, there was Miss Dotson and also Miss Mormon. So Miss Dotson was the director of the magnet program at Westlake, which was the Math and Science magnet program. And again, I was a little bad student from middle school. I had terrible grades, but Miss Dotson, said they'd let me into the program anyway, despite my bad grades. And that really changed my life a lot. I mean, Miss Dotson really, and even the whole time I was at Westlake, Miss Dotson really looked out for me and never really told me that there was anything I couldn't do as far as which schools I wanted to apply to, which for college, whatever. Miss Dotson really, really, really helped me out and was always there for me. Miss Mormon was my counselor, my guidance counselor. She was also phenomenal, a true hero. And then added to that, I had Miss Ziegler and Miss Phipps from the Upward Bound program at Atlanta Metropolitan College. And so there were always I was always surrounded by these female educators and facilitators who really made it possible for me to see what my potential was and what the opportunities I had before me were. In college, college was weird because there weren't a lot of there weren't a lot of women in education. Certainly Ellen Dunham Jones saw a lot of potential in me. She gave me a job as her special assistant, and I sort of worked to investigate sort of diversity issues, worked with her closely to spearhead some initiatives in terms of competitions that were geared towards the African American experience and different things. There just really wasn't enough. We didn't have a critical mass in the College of Architecture, frankly. It just wasn't there. So, try as she might, Ellen, who was white, did a lot, but if there's only 5 students or 10 students at any one point in time, you can build some relationships, but it's not a lot you're going to be able to do. So kudos to Ellen for giving me a job, and also just being supportive throughout my entire time. at Georgia Tech and beyond. Linda Thomas Mobley, who was the director of the building construction program where I got my master's, was also a huge support to me. And so I'm just throwing out names of these women who you will never otherwise hear about, but I know that I wouldn't be where I am now if it weren't for each and every one of them. Like, they all did something really specific that kind of pushed me in another direction. Perhaps no one more so than Kim Harrington, Pete, Dr. Kim Harrington, Pete now, who was the advisor to the African American Student Union, thankfully during the time that I was president of the African American Student Union at Georgia Tech. And so Kim became sort of like a second mother on campus. Kim was super busy. Kim was like really, really, really busy in changing the world before us. But it was really amazing to have someone like her in our corner when we were trying to really knock down barriers at this school. So thank you, Kim Harrington Pete. Okay, so say all that. I'm really not gonna recognize any peers in this list, so if you're not listed, it's not because I don't like celebrate what you've done, Valerie, or I don't even want to get into names. So hey, I mean, you all know who you are. My sisters, Kiara and Navia, y'all know who you are. But I want to talk sort of more specific about like people who helped me, who didn't know me and had no reason other than to just sort of, they could have just walked right away from what I was trying to do. But they didn't. So it's a little late as I'm recording, so I'm having tea instead of coffee. It sort of dawned on me as I was watching the Academy Awards that there were things that I further don't understand, and I have blind spots that I need to kind of work on, and I really don't even know how to go about working on those things. The whole awards were somewhat fascinating. I thought it was interesting that Ryan Seacrest was still presenting. I mean, was still on the red carpet. I loved how Taraji P. Henson just read him for filth. And you have to forgive me at this part because this is not a written portion of this episode. But when the winner of the best one, I love that they had replaced Casey Anthony with two actresses. I'm not great with like Hollywood names, so like as far as remembering who presented in lieu of Casey Anthony, I'm pretty sure that Jennifer Lawrence was one of them, but I don't remember who the other person was. But that was good. And then for the winner of the Best Actress Award to get on there and give her speech and asking all the women in the audience to stand up, I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was a great, great demonstration. I think it's interesting because in the room where I was watching the Academy Awards, I was surrounded by a bunch of people, and the reactions were very much mixed when this actress called for the inclusion rider as her two-word end-all. And I thought that was good. I mean, I think an inclusion rider just in terms of gender is fantastic. I think it's even better if you focus and open that up to ethnicity as well. But seeing, people up on the stage collecting their awards and being representative of every community. The one winner who got her award and she signed her speech to the actress in the film, or to who the film was dedicated to. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, I think having people who are multi-talented and conscious and perceptive is a really good thing. But I also think when you hire women, you get that anyway. Like, that's kind of built in, right? Like, women, I think, are just more sympathetic, more compassionate, more empathetic, more open to accepting, in not every case, but just more open to accepting other cultures and other ethnicities, people of different, diversity that we need to tell these stories. Carry that out. I'm not going to talk about the awards because it's not that serious. But then I started watching like other projects and different things, and I thought, I really was inspired by Black Panther and how the women's role as actresses played into that storyline. I really was inspired by that. But then when it went to, am I going to go watch A Wrinkle in Time, I really had to ask myself, am I going to go prioritize seeing this movie? Is it something I want to see? Am I going to identify with it? I think I've settled on the fact that I need to go see the movie whether I want to or not. It is no knock against any of the actresses in the film, but I don't know that I don't see any connection to it. And I don't know what that means in terms of the conversation. And that's what I've kind of been grappling with today. On top of the fact that it's sort of like an anniversary of a family tragedy for us, I also kind of just was torn in where my place is as someone who, I have a YouTube channel, so what, But at the end of the day, I think these messages are getting documented. They're going to be added to a broader conversation of what people were thinking at the time. And I don't want to be off on that. I think Ava DuVernay's work is brilliant. I think she's very celebrated, and I'm happy that she's celebrated for it. To some extent, I don't like going to see stuff by people who are just that famous. And I thought maybe that's sexist. Like maybe me saying that, I don't want to go see a movie where Oprah's starring in it because Oprah's super famous, or I don't want to see a movie that Ava DuVernay directed because she's super famous, or for whatever reason. I don't know what that's about. So I want to kind of get a better understanding of that, and I feel like I can't do that without going to see the movie. So I'm absolutely going to do my best to go see the movie. And certainly, it's the movie makes history, so that's another reason to go watch. But I want to get back to what we talked about. And so when I think about conversations like that I have in my head, obviously, I then think about, well, who out there has put something out that makes it possible for me to do what I'm doing here? Many of you, if this isn't your first time watching an episode, which I hope it's not, because this is, again, not going to be a very polished episode, and I apologize to the women who are being thanked because I owe you a much greater tribute than what this episode is going to be. But this is just a personal conversation, and I think sometimes it's fine to just have a discussion about what my internal thought process is. So, that being said, I owe a lot to Oprah Winfrey. As far as, and this is my second half of the list, people who some I've met, some I haven't met any of these people actually, except maybe one or two. But Oprah Winfrey, her life's work is so inspirational in the sense that, no, I've never met her, but I look at how she does interviews, and I look at how she's able to connect with people and the stories she's able to bring to the forefront. And I really just am enamored by all of that. I mean, I'm talking specifically Interview Oprah from the Oprah Winfrey Show. I learned so much about how to connect with people, whether it was in leadership positions or whether it was in an interview setting for a job or whatever. Just about how to actually listen and how you can gain and be a better communicator when you work more to listen. I feel like I learned that by watching Oprah videos. There's so much stuff out there. I don't like that it's all chopped up into clips. I wish there was an Oprah show archive, and there probably is somewhere, that I could just go and watch full episodes in a row, because I didn't watch it, in real time. But yeah, I think what she does is brilliant. I love the Oprah Winfrey Network. I think that in many ways, seeing her aspire to that and do that and fight through the challenges may allow me or gave me the strength to even try to do what I'm doing on this much, much smaller scale, where I'm trying to find a platform home. I'm trying to find lighting. I'm trying to find different things that I need to pull this sort of independent, sort of multicultural. I don't want to use the term multicultural. It'll be a black PBS basically. If I had my way of what this whole channel looked like, it would be to essentially be inspired by the television of the past, from the perspective of like a public broadcasting channel, like where they always talked about the arts and movies, and I mean the arts and music, and there were some movies, of course, longer projects, but there was children's programming, there was news programming, also cooking shows, which brings me to Julia Child, is another person who inspires me. I know that's weird. Rest in peace, Julia Child. She had a whole bunch of careers, right? But I just think going back to, again, what I saw growing up on PBS, watching her cook, I think that meant one thing for me growing up. Part of it was just we were bored and there was nothing else on TV, especially on the weekends. But, watching her show was great. But then separately, when I went back to start trying to do The Counter, which is my cooking show that's on the same channel, it was interesting because I always found myself gravitating towards her recipes as like a standard. And I really love that she didn't really start cooking until later. I love that she made it about the food and about the ingredients. And she really took a whole end-to-end approach about how to talk about the food so someone wasn't intimidated by it, someone wasn't afraid to get into the kitchen and do the stuff. And if you watch my show, The Counter, which is a cooking show, I always try to talk from the perspective of the food and also discussing the access issues. Now, Julia wasn't talking about necessarily the same elements of food that I am. I think front and center on my show is really much more about affordability of food and making the pieces fit for your family budget and health. I don't think that Julia that was her focus, but in terms of like a pitch, how recipes work, I didn't know how to write a recipe. I still don't know how to write a recipe, but as far as like demonstrating what these recipes are, when I do them on the show, for the most part, they are my recipes, if nothing else. They might be inspired by somebody else, but it's not something that I'm cooking from this scripted line and then somebody prepares all the food for me to put into this thing. It's not done, and so I'm very much inspired by how she does it from the standpoint of how I'm trying to put the show together. Tyra Banks absolutely inspires me as a television producer. I mean, Tyra Banks inspires me as everything that she does, just from all of her acting and her modeling and her beauty and the business and everything. But as far as her producing on America's Next Top Model, that's one of the shows that I really grew up watching later on. Once I got to understand what goes into a television show. And I remember at some point when I was super intimidated about trying to do this YouTube channel, I would go back and I would watch season 1 of America's Next Top Model and see that all of it wasn't perfect on that show, but it still ended up being one of the greatest successful TV shows in history. I look at clips where all of the sound wasn't perfect, or all of the audio wasn't perfect, or the script wasn't perfect. So, they'll show Tyra in the judging room next to Kimora Lee Simmons, and she'll be talking, and then they'll cut to the girls on a B-roll footage type thing, and then Tyra will finish this perfectly scripted, eloquent sentence, and then they'll cut back to Tyra as if she said that whole thing in that room, and she didn't. But I think it's okay because it showed me what I learned by watching that show and continuing to watch America's Next Top Model. Even though I will say, the only person I believe her name is Erin, to win. Erin is the grandmother character. She's stunning. I just hope she wins. I really hope she wins. And I hate that I try to sum her down into that one category, but again, I'm not really great with memorizing people's names. If your name isn't Erin, I apologize. I hope you win. But I'm very much inspired by Tyra Banks and what she's done just from that standpoint. How it's very apparent that she didn't necessarily have all of the tools, she didn't have all of the understanding when she endeavored to do Top Model, but she fought for it and she kept going. And so I've learned a lot in that process. Soledad OBrien. Soledad OBrien, I think, more than anyone, got me interested in watching television news because it wasn't something that I really was into. I watched it because it was on, but during the, I I remember becoming familiar with her reporting after Hurricane Katrina. And there was a clip, I didn't even see it like live, but there was a clip on this documentary that Spike Lee did for HBO on Hurricane Katrina that I watched. And Soledad OBrien was very much, prominently featured in that documentary. And she was kicking ass and taking names. And she was not letting these people off the hook. And I had never seen anyone really do that in an interview. I never saw anyone do that on TV. And I became really inspired by her willingness to just go for it. Like, she really did not let people off the hook if somebody was lying. And I had never seen anyone do that. Now I see that all the time in Joy Reid, but Soledad, for me, is where that started. And maybe there was someone who came before her, but for me, I think I always go back to those clips. I always go back to her career and say, there was something about the energy that she brought that really, and she was so nice about it. Like, it was kind of like, I'm going to smile at you and tell you that you're full of shit, right? Like, that's kind of what she did. And I thought that was amazing. I still think Soledad OBrien is amazing. Joy Reid, of course. Speaking in terms of what we're doing now, I kind of want to skip around here because this is where it gets a little strange. I love Angela Rye. I think there was a dark point when I was trying to do all this. I don't remember when it was, but Angela Rye started doing a podcast, and I remember seeing her podcast and just thinking, like, she is just doing it. Like, she has all the access in the world. Well, not really, but, she has a great platform, surely, and she's still doing this podcast. Like, she's dedicated to the consistency of it. She's putting it out there, and she's making her viewpoint accessible. And I think that's very important. And so sometimes when it gets to it's Thursday at night and I don't want to post this because it's not going to get a lot of views because it's posted so late, or if it's Friday, God forbid, and it's also late and no one's going to watch this. I've always kind of drawn from the current spirit of Angela Rye and the Resistance, because sometimes it's very easy to say or believe that it doesn't matter whether I put this episode out, or it doesn't matter whether anyone sees this or not, but it does matter, and it's important that we continue to do this stuff in the climate that we're in. And I really was trying to avoid talking about the climate at all on this episode, so I'm going to quickly talk about sort of more childhood inspirations that I've never met. Diana Ross, I would say thank you to, because as a photographer, Diana Ross gave me so much confidence and so much to aspire to as a photographer, a studio photographer, learning portraiture and learning lighting. For people who looked like the other people that I knew. When I started as a portrait photographer, I did it in a classroom setting at Georgia Tech. But some people would shoot people and they would all shoot white people because they were all white. And I would always shoot black people because that was who I knew. I didn't know any white people who I could call up and say, okay, come shoot with me in this studio at 10:30 p.m. in this dark basement of this architecture building. Because that was the only time I had to do a portrait session. So I'm shooting my Jamaican friends and my Nigerian friends and my Liberian friends and my American black friends. And, that's who I shot with because that's who I knew. But the more I studied my work and practiced, and the more and this was before I had any peers in doing photography, like Taurus Love or whoever else, who became friends, who, we would talk about it professionally. I think I only knew what photography looked like from the vantage point of Diana Ross' iconic 70s and 80s photographs. And so that always was the underlying script of how I set up a shoot, or what I was going for when I was doing a shoot. And then I would branch out from that, but I needed that. And I think surely I should be thanking the photographer as well, but it's not as important because, I needed someone cool to make these people look like, or to try to make them look like. And Diana Ross was all I really had at the time. I mean, certainly the more I got into photography, the more I learned about other, you know, Richard Avedon and all these other people who shot all these other people that I could look towards for inspiration. But it all started with Diana Ross, so thank you for that. I want to thank Surya Bonali for just being a badass on the ice. I don't need to say any more than that. Lynne Thigpen, who was the host of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and many other programs. I just always thought she was interesting. She reminded me of all of my teachers, and she was on TV. And she got me like even more interested in geography. I just remember like being really proud when that show would come on and they would show the African map and I would like know what all the countries were. And people are like, how the hell, as this like 10-year-old like or 8-year-old, how do you know where all these countries are? Like, even if you lived in Liberia, like it doesn't mean that you would know what the countries look like. So I was always, my understanding of geography just through that one show and sort of other sort of social issues, I think that was a very important basis for understanding. And she probably doesn't get any credit for like doing that ever. So thank you, Lynne Thigpen of PBS. And then I want to thank Julie Louis-Dreyfus, aka Elaine Bennis, aka Vice President Selena Meyer, who is probably one of the funniest people I've ever seen on television. Elaine's character was probably my family's favorite character on television at any one, like consistently at any one point in time. So you could talk about The Simpsons, you could talk about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I think Elaine was like a specific character to us that we all really, really, really liked. And you brought so much to that character, and I've always like followed your career. Now, The New Adventures of Olive Christine was not my favorite show, but that's not what this show is about, or this episode rather. I just want to thank you for being open about your struggle with, or your fight with cancer. That's been, I know, inspirational to very many, and probably very like sad for a lot of people. But I think the fact that you put that out there certainly means a lot to a lot of people. And then I want to, of course, I kind of want to thank one really cliche person and one really not cliche person. So the cliche person would be Hillary Clinton. Hillary Rodham Clinton, you are fantastic even still. Again, I knew it was International Women's Day, but I didn't plan to do anything. But Hillary Clinton, who almost tweets nothing, tweeted this whole like thread about all these great stories and all these things to be inspired by. And that's kind of really what got me thinking that I needed to post something today. So thank you, Hillary Clinton, and obviously for being a total badass and running for president twice, and also being Secretary of State, and also being a badass First Lady. I think, you know, you're just kind of as good as it gets. And with that, I'm going to thank another cliche person, Michelle Obama. But that's not to take any thunder away from Hillary Clinton, because they're two completely different people. But I love Michelle Obama as well. And I want to end this by thanking, almost end it, by thanking Ensei Ufat, who is my friend. Now, Ensei I met, Ensei is also a member, let me start over. Ensei is really cool, right? But I met Ensei when she came into the studio to do a photo shoot. And I had never met her before, didn't know anything about her. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated in the Xi Alpha chapter of Georgia Tech. And I'm very close with a lot of those young ladies. And so they recommended her to me, and she came here and we shot, and she was really cool. And she was telling me about all this work that her organization, the New Georgia Project, was doing. This must have been in 2014 or 2015, like it was early 2015. And so I really just logged it back in the back of my brain. I didn't do anything with it. When I moved back to Atlanta in 2016 to kind of focus on the election, I worked with Ensei's organization. Only after having run into Ensei at a friend's cookout, a neighbor's cookout. And it just was kind of one of those moments that was like, okay, there's a reason why we keep getting sort of put into the same room. Not even to say that I've done anything like what Ensei does. But Ensei has probably been if this list is about women who inspire me to continue to do what I'm doing, just on this the side vision of doing the television work, Nsé has been really high at on the top of that list. Our mutual friend Asohe Galbraith has also been on that list in terms of facilitating my ability to do this stuff. But Nsé, just in terms of like letting me come in and do a commercial for the New Georgia Project, and then, you know, giving me the access to your team to do it, and then also to thank me for doing it and be so complimentary and enthusiastic about the work. So I'm very grateful for her encouragement when I was doing it. She really allowed me to contribute to her organization and using the video talent. I mean, I think people know me for photos, like I'm a photographer mainly, and then this is all new for me. So, well, not new, but it's new. So thank you, Nsé. And Nsé just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. She documented the whole thing via sort of Facebook posts. And it was really inspirational to watch her journey throughout, and just sort of some of the confrontations that she had. And just, I think when you listen, when you really take the time to watch what people are going for, what they aspire for, and listen to what they say about what they experienced, I think, especially women, I think you really, that's where the room to grow and learn from really is in all of this. And I think, again, from someone who wasn't going to post anything today because I was in my feelings about my family trauma in 1992, but then separately, I think just feeling the need to recognize some of these, you know, no-name faces, and there's still no-face names because I'm not going to put any faces on top of this video. I think it's important to always just reach back and say thank you to my mom and my teachers and my sisters, my real sisters, and also extended friends and family, and then also just the people I've never met and will probably never meet, who have also significantly impacted my career. And a lot of these people are Black, but a lot of them aren't. And I think that's important too, because we have to be able to look for inspiration from the Mrs. Stevens and the Julia Louis-Dreyfuses and the Hillary Clintons, as much as we can from and the Julia Childs, as much as we can from a Tyra Banks or an Oprah. So with that, I'd like to end the show with thanking our friends to the show, who are all women. I want to thank Marianne N. I want to thank Elizabeth C. And I want to thank Lynn K. And if you'd like to become a friend to the show, please make a donation to the PayPal link, www.paypal.me/jkh2. I am in the process, and I always say this, of sort of formalizing a couple things. Big kudos to Adrian C. Jackson. I hate that I'm even recognizing any man on this show right now, but Adrian Jackson launched the Amplified platforms, starting with Speaking last week, and it really is cool. It's like a really, really cool platform, and it is a massive undertaking. So again, follow Adrian C. Jackson on Twitter, because that whole story is really important in terms of innovation, and it is women-centric, even though he's not a woman. It is the approach is recognizing a value that women add to any social interaction or any project that you're doing that will just ultimately make it better. Like, it's better than if you just had a bunch of men making decisions. So kudos to Adrian. I say that to say that we're expecting the launch of ViewHub very soon. So with ViewHub, I've always envisioned that this show will have a space, a better home, or possibly a good home at ViewHub. So I'm not in a position to say now that that's where the next episode is going to be, or when episodes are going to start appearing on ViewHub. It'll probably be a situation where some exclusive content appears on ViewHub and most of the content still appears here on YouTube. I don't know. We will see. But look forward to that, and I will end on that note. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you will continue to enjoy your Women's History Month and your International Women's Day. I am James K. Holder II. I'd like to ask you to relax, relate, and resist. Thank you.
Too complex, much too complex, too complex, much too complex, too complex, too complex, too complex.